This is the fourth in a series of 5 videos, which will focus on the IMO's Carbon Intensity Indicator, CII, and Ship Energy Efficiency Management Plan, SEEMP. The videos are an introduction to CII, CII guidelines, worked example, DCS and SEEMP, certification and verification. In this video, we will focus on the IMO DCS, or Data Collection System, and the new Part 3 of the SEEMP, Ship Energy Efficiency Management Plan. At the end of the video, you will understand what data is submitted to the DCS, what the DCS is used for, the purpose of SEEMP Part 3, and the contents of SEEMP Part 3. Resolution MEPC 278/70 contained amendments to MARPOL Annex VI to bring into force the Data Collection System, DCS, for fuel oil consumption data from 2019 onwards. The following are required to be sent to administrations for verification, along with supporting evidence where necessary, before being submitted to the DCS annually under MARPOL and SEEMP Part 2. Fuel consumption in tons of each type of fuel oil and method used to collect fuel consumption. Distance traveled and hours underway. Deadweight, net tonnage, and gross tonnage. Main and auxiliary installed power. Ship type, ice class, attained EEDI along with identifiers such as IMO number, ship name, and flag. Start and end date of the reporting period. Every year, the IMO produces a report summarizing the data in the DCS, including total fuel consumption broken down by fuel type. An example is shown in the figure. The 2019 data in the DCS was also used to set CII baselines and also the rating boundaries. In the future, the data in the DCS will be used to assess the progress made by the world fleet in improving energy efficiency and carbon intensity. Amendments to MARPOL Annex VI to collect data on corrected and uncorrected CII, CII rating, trial CII metrics, attained EEXI, and year of build were adopted at MEPC 79. And enter into force in early 2024, though submission of these parameters for 2023 data is encouraged. The data is not accessible except for parties to MARPOL Annex VI. However, even this full dataset is anonymized and rounded to preserve confidentiality. Parties and those authorized by it have full access to the data that they have submitted. SEEMP, or the Ship Energy Efficiency Management Plan, consists of 3 parts, of which parts 1 and 2 are existing, and part 3 is new, having been finalized in 2022. Part 1 describes an approach to monitor ship and fleet efficiency performance over time, and describes ways to improve ship energy efficiency performance, and applies to ships above 400 GT. While the management plan required in Part 1 is submitted for verification, no audits are carried out on whether it is implemented, and targets and measures are generally not quantified. Part 1 is linked to Regulation 26.1 of MARPOL Annex VI. Part 2 describes the methodologies that should be used to collect fuel consumption data, Regulation 27 of MARPOL Annex VI. For submission to the DCS, and applies to ships above 5,000 GT. Part 2 is linked to Regulation 26.2 of MARPOL Annex VI. Part 3 applies to any ships of 5,000 GT and above, and which may be categorized as a bulk carrier, combination carrier, container ship, cruise passenger ship, gas carrier, general cargo ship, LNG carrier, refrigerated cargo carrier, ro-ro cargo ship, ro-ro cargo ship vehicle carrier, ro-ro passenger ship, or tanker. Part 3 of the SEEMP should be submitted for verification prior to the 1st of January 2023, and once satisfactorily assessed, the ship will be issued with a confirmation of compliance. For ships delivered after the 1st of January 2023, submission of the SEEMP for verification and issue of confirmation of compliance should take place prior to delivery. Further details may be found in MAPC.1 Circular 795, Revision 7, Unified Interpretations to MARPOL Annex VI. The new SEEMP Part III, otherwise known as the Ship Operational Carbon Intensity Plan, is required by Regulations 26.3 and 28.8 of MARPOL Annex VI, and the purpose is to provide a description of the methodology that should be used to calculate the ship's attained annual operational CII required by Regulation 28 of MARPOL Annex VI, the processes that should be used to report this value to the ship's administration or any organization duly authorized by it, the required annual operational CII for the next 3 years, an implementation plan documenting how the required annual operational CII should be achieved during the next 3 years, a procedure for self-evaluation and improvement. For ships rated as D for 3 consecutive years or rated as E, a plan of corrective actions to achieve the required annual operational CII. The implementation plan is ship-specific. SEEMP Part III builds on the framework of the SEEMP as set out in SEEMP Part I, with an emphasis on tangible targets and measures, using the CII as a metric for monitoring progress and subjecting implementation to periodic audit. The first stage of the SEEMP is planning, and this includes calculating the required CII for the next 3 years, estimating and targeting attained CII, assessing the impact of different ship-specific measures, and considering impediments and contingencies. The next step of a SEEMP is implementation, and here this consists of a 3-year ship-specific implementation plan that is SMART, that is, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound to the extent feasible, assigning responsibilities to specific personnel for the implementation of measures, providing deadlines for implementation of each measure, and record keeping. The third step of a SEEMP is monitoring. The CII metric is suggested to be used for monitoring. However, the data collection for fuel consumption encourages daily or voyage-based monitoring. Ships and companies may also have implemented other monitoring systems or metrics. The fourth step of a SEEMP is self-evaluation and improvement. The process could consist of regular internal shipboard and company audits, adjusting measures, applying additional preventive measures, and reviewing, updating the SEEMP. This could include criteria for evaluation, elements to be evaluated, for example, quality of monitoring, effectiveness of measures, identifying discrepancies or system shortcomings. Ships are encouraged to set additional ship-specific goals that go beyond the CII requirements and strive for energy efficiency improvements and carbon intensity reduction beyond such requirements. The first section of the SEEMP Part III consists of the review and update log, which records changes that have been made. If any of the elements in Regulation 26.3.1 are updated, the SEEMP should be submitted for verification. On submission for initial verification, the table in Section 2 of SEEMP Part III is filled in, except for the rows marked year -1 to year -3. These are filled after each year's reporting is completed and the attained CII has been calculated. Section 3 consists of the calculation methodology, which specifies whether CII should be calculated using the formula in Guidelines G1 or G5, and explains how the relevant data, particularly for G5, will be derived. In Section 4, the 3-year implementation plan starts with space to provide an overview of the plan and any specific issues that need to be noted. The plan should be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound to the extent feasible. Next comes a table listing the measures being considered to improve CII. These could be operational choices such as optimal speed, weather routing, or proactive cleaning of biofouling, perhaps even combined with voyage-based or high-frequency performance monitoring. Or they could be technical interventions such as the fitting of specific equipment or the use of shore power. An estimate of the impact of each measure on the attained CII should be provided, and you may be required to provide supporting documentation. Note that a 5% improvement in propulsion fuel consumption does not translate to a 5% improvement in attained CII for a number of reasons. The combined effect of the measures should also be estimated, though this is usually not the sum of the individual effects, but the product. Some planning elements such as milestones and due dates are also required, as are the personnel responsible for the implementation. Finally, risks should be addressed by consideration of impediments and contingency measures. Section 5 is the self-evaluation and improvement section, which relies on the analysis of data that is collected through monitoring, and this is often based on daily or voyage-based reports, which are also aggregated for submission for verification. Although not often mentioned, data should always be subject to standardization and error checking before further use. Procedures for self-evaluation and improvement should be described in this section and could consist of regular internal shipboard and company audits, review of the SEEMP, review of fuel consumption data, and how the process of implementing improvements is triggered and carried out. Further details may be found in the SEEMP guidelines. In the case of ships that are rated E for 1 year or D for 3 consecutive years, a plan of corrective actions needs to be developed and submitted for verification, and this forms Section 6 of SEEMP Part III. The plan should describe the actions that the ship plans to take, the timeline in which those actions will be applied, and the expected impact their application will have on the ship's CII rating. The plan includes an analysis of the causes for inferior CII rating so that actions or measures can be appropriately targeted. It should also include an analysis of the performance of measures already implemented. Where additional or revised measures are necessary, these should be added to the implementation plan found in Section 4 of SEEMP Part III, along with milestones, deadlines, personnel responsible, and consideration of contingencies and impediments. Note that ships delivered on the 1st of October or later of each calendar year, and which are rated E in the first 3 or less months of operation, do not need to develop a plan of corrective actions.